Hey guys, it's Dylan from Noble Records coming at you with another video. This video I tried to do just top 10 albums that I love in my collection. These aren't going to be the most expensive necessarily or the most rare necessarily, but these are the ones that are some of my absolute favorites that I have, and they all have like a sentimental meaning of why I really like them. So it's going to be more of a personal video. I also did about a month ago my top 10 most valuable records in my collection. A lot of those are some of my favorites too, so I on purpose did not select any of those for this list because I'm just trying to put out as much new content as possible since we're all stuck at home quarantine. So I chose these in chronological order, not in order how much I like them because I couldn't decide. So this is in chronological order of when I found what. So this will be a fun one. Let's get started. First one is this one, and I know you're saying, oh, it's just a record, doesn't have a sleeve. This is I don't really know, I don't understand the title of this actually, but it's Luther Georgia Snakeboy Johnson, the Muddy Waters Blues Band is what it's called. So this is the copy that I found first. I was 13 years old, 12 years old, something like that, and there's a record shop kind of near our house, and they would throw tons of records in the dumpster every day. And so when we were in the area kind of out getting some things done, my mom would like drive me by there and let me jump in their dumpster and find records. I'm not joking. I did that all the time. So one of the first times I ever did that, found this. I had heard of Muddy Waters, but I'd never heard his music, and put this on, and it just blew my mind. It changed my life. And I'm not joking. This changed my life. I started trying to learn how to play blues progressions on guitar and stuff. It just completely changed the way I thought about music, opened me up. And the funny thing is, I never knew what the cover looked like because it didn't come with a cover. It actually didn't even come with a sleeve. It just came in the garbage, just like this. I mean, and it's in rough shape. I'm sure you can tell. So I don't listen to this copy anymore, and it's probably worthless. But it's not an album you hear a lot of people talk about. But later on, I found this is a nice mint, near mint promo copy. But yeah, this is what the cover looks like, which is so killer. I mean, that cover is beautiful. But it's on Douglas Records. This is not one that you see very often talked about in the blues scene, but it's phenomenal. And it will probably always be my favorite blues album just because it had such a deep impact on me. But yeah, I mean, I just remember hearing it, how much passion and soul was in that music. Never heard anything like it in my life. So that really changed my life. So that was when I was like 13, 14. I talked in my Pink Floyd video about this one, so I'll just talk about it really quick. This one I found when I was 14 or 15. I was at an Allman Brothers concert, and in the parking lot there was a guy selling records out of the back of his truck. And I got this and a few other Pink Floyd albums out of the back of his truck for $2 each. I got this home, and I was like, what is this writing on this is so weird. And I remember thinking, I'm just going to rip this off and throw it in the trash. Because I was a stupid kid. And I was like, you know what, it is kind of cool. I'll shove it inside the sleeve and leave it, and I don't want to throw anything away. And thank God I didn't. This is one of the only, this one and the last one are some of the only albums that I have from being a kid. I've sold my collection a couple times over when life happened, and I actually did sell this to one of my very good friends, Chris, Tunes for the Man Cave. I sold it to him, and I remember like I was going through a really tough time. My son was diagnosed with autism 3 years ago, and so I started selling all my records to pay for his therapy. And I remember selling this, and this was the one that like hurt me to sell because I'd had it since I was a kid, and I loved it all these years. And as an adult, I realized what it really was, and it was a really good Japanese pressing of this album. And it was just amazing that I found as a kid. It had such a rich story for me, but like it was just such a impactful time to where I realized I was doing this for my son, and I didn't need things. I needed that money at that time for that reason. So I remember boxing this up and shipping it to Chris and crying. I literally cried when I sold this because it meant so much to me. And years down the road, Chris posted this for sale on his Instagram page. He didn't even know. And I was like, please, God, tell me you haven't sold that. And so he sold it back to me. And I was very grateful that I was able to get it from him. So that's kind of a really super personal story. But anyways, next one, when I was in junior high, late middle school, early high school, I was talking with my friends. We would always talk about the musicians that we love the most. And amongst those musicians were, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, and everyone talked about Bob Marley. And so I always said, oh yeah, Bob Marley's one of my favorites. I'd never heard him. I didn't even know what Bob Marley was. I thought he was just this rock great in rock and roll. I didn't know he played reggae. I didn't have any idea. So I went to the store and bought a Bob Marley CD at Walmart and got it home and listened to it, and I was like, this is not what I expected. I don't like this. Because I had expected it to be something like Jimi Hendrix. And it just wasn't. It just wasn't, You know what Bob Marley sounds like. Everybody does. And so I just kind of tucked the CD away in my giant CD trapper keeper thing and forgot about it. Because I was like, I don't know, this is beach music. Because in my opinion, like, growing up, the only time I ever heard reggae was when we were at the beach. And so a couple years go by. I'm like, 14, 15. And I whip the CD out. I'm like, we're going to the beach. Let's listen to Bob Marley. And I listened to it the whole time we're at the beach, and I just fell in love with it. But it's this album, Natural Mystic. So, it starts with the Natural Mystic just coming in, and it's so quiet. And I remember we'd always turn the stereo up really loud because we couldn't hear it. And then it would just get louder and louder and louder until the music was really loud. But this compilation was what I got at Walmart. And I remember thinking, man, that would be so cool if they put that on vinyl. Because when you hear an album and you can hear the tracks in your head, like when one ends, you can hear when the next one comes. And since this is a compilation, I was like, I'll never find that on vinyl. And I really didn't think it existed. Because this was before Discogs or anything like that. I didn't think it existed. And I was, this was when me and my wife first got married and I first started buying and selling records. And bought these records from these kids in a coffee shop parking lot, and this was in there, and I could not believe it. This is an original Jamaican pressing, and I think it was pressed in the 90s, but it doesn't look like a 90s press to me. It's kind of baffling, but I think they sell for like $30 or something. They're not too expensive, but this is just to find it that way, it just completely blew my mind, and I couldn't believe it. So that's that one for me. I'm trying to get through these. I know I don't want this to be a super long video. Next one is my first collection by me and my wife were broke. This was 2010. We just got married, and I was buying and selling guitars to kind of get by, and I wasn't making much money. And we were young and in love, and our apartment was $600 a month, and we got by on what we had, and so I had $200 to my name. That's it. I'd just gotten fired from my job, and found this guy that had all these records he wanted to sell. I bought records growing up, and I sold my collection when we got married because we didn't need the money, and I didn't have any more records, but I secretly kind of wanted some more records to get it back into it because I just loved that part of my life. So I was like, maybe I can buy this collection, keep the ones I want, sell the ones I don't want, and then break even or make some money. That was my goal. So went to this guy's house. Long story short, he had 7,000 records. He had a record store in the late 80s and shut it down in the early 90s. Everything in there was either sealed or promo copies. Some things were autographed. It was crazy collection, but I didn't know much about the late 80s, early 90s. So there was punk rock, there was new wave, everything The Cure ever did, everything New Order, Joy Division, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, the Ramones, like Sex Pistols, all that stuff. And it was 7,000, and they were all mint or promo or sealed or whatever. And I went in there and started looking through them. I was like, I've heard some of this stuff, but most of it I'd never even heard of. And I just was like, how much? I can't afford this. How much do you want? He's like, how much money you got in your pocket? And I said, I don't have enough. He said, I got to move today, and these are in my way, and I'm not bringing them with me. How much you got? I said, I got $200, man. He's like, let's do it. And I thought, I don't know if I can make my money back. I don't know anything about this. This could all be junk. And I just closed my eyes and said, God, I'm going to reach out and pick out an album, and if it's the good one, we'll do it. And pulled out this Duke Ellington and John Coltrane. This is a promo copy, but it's like a late 80s press. This is supposed to be on premium audiophile vinyl, whatever. But I had wanted this record so bad. This was a jazz record that I always loved. Had it on CD. I've been listening to it like crazy, like even at that time, and I always wanted it on vinyl. And when I pulled it out, I could not believe that's what I pulled out. So I was really stoked about that. And then a couple years ago, or no, this was about a year ago, I found this. This is an original press of it. So that's, you know, we'll lump those two together. So that was early marriage. I was 21, 22. Maybe a couple years later, I met this guy up in the mountains, and he had this just incredible record collection, unbelievable stuff. And I'm telling you, like thinking about it now, I wish I could find somebody that had stuff like this. He was a rep for Linn Audio, Linn, high-end audio gear in like the late 80s, and he bought tons of records so he would always find like the best sounding stuff to demo on the tables. So he had a lot of audiophile stuff, and then he also had like just freaking rare stuff no one has. He had a ton of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, like Guns N' Roses, a lot of like still sealed stuff, the band covers, all that stuff. He had like the really rare 90s Tom Waits albums. He had Tool, all this like really super rare stuff. And there were two records that he gave me because I'd never heard of them. One of them was Temple of the Dog. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. And sadly, when I sold my collection a few years ago, I sold it. So I hate that. I don't even remember who got it. So I hate that I sold the original press of Temple of the Dog. That was regrettable, but it was for a good reason. But this is another one but he told me for this one, he said, I'm going to give you this record, because I'd never heard of it, didn't know what it was. So I'm going to give you this record because it's so good, and I could never sell this record, but I don't need it, and I don't listen to records anymore. But I flipped right past this MC5, Kick Out the Jams, and I never heard it. He's like, are you seriously not picking up Kick Out the Jams? I was like, I don't know what that is. Because I'm honest. If I've never heard of something, I'll tell you I've never heard of it. I never heard of it. And he said, dude, take it home. You can have it. He said, this is original pressing with the notes. His aunt had given it to him, and his aunt had passed away. It was her favorite record. It became one of his favorite records. So he said, I could never sell this, but I'll give it to you. And me and him, so his records in his collection, he was charging $5 each for. So this was early on, and I would only have like a couple $100 to spend. I was broke. And I would come with $200-300 in my pocket and spend it all, and I would get as many albums as I could, and I'd say I'll be back in a couple months and save up, go back up there, and buy more. And so this particular time I didn't have any more money. He gave me that. He said, listen. And so we became really good friends over that. We still talk sometimes. A really super nice guy. But yeah, this is just an album, and I actually gave it to Chris, Students from the Man Cave. And because I told him I would never sell it, but if I ever had to get rid of it, I'd give it away. And then Chris gave it back to me a couple years ago. So it's been around. The next one is this one. Found this years ago online. Never even heard of this. Didn't know it existed. But this is Led Zeppelin. Well, they call it Electric Magic, I guess, because of the poster. But it's Royal Albert Hall, 1970. This is the first live show I ever heard of Led Zeppelin. And it's got the poster, which is the cover, is that Electric Magic cover. But anyway, it's just such a psychedelic killer cover. I've always loved that painting. It was a concert poster, is what it was. But anyways, this is one of only 250 made. This is a bootleg of that audio. But this is the first live Zeppelin I ever heard. And when I was a kid, I got this video that my mom had bought me for my birthday of Zeppelin live, and it was Royal Albert Hall 1970. And I memorized that back and forth. I loved it. I watched it all the time. I put it on as I was going to bed at night and just listened to it in my sleep, wanting to play guitar like Jimmy Page. So I hadn't, like, to my knowledge, it wasn't even on vinyl. And I found this online, and then to make it even cooler, it's got this killer colored wax on it. It's a trademark of quality pressing. But like I said, there's only 250 made, and I had it, loved it. It was my favorite record in my collection. People always ask, what's your favorite record? This was my favorite one. And I had an opportunity to get a really rare guitar amp. I didn't have an amp at the time. I really needed one. started making a little bit of money playing music, and so I actually sold this to get that guitar amp. These sell for a good bit, and after that, I mean, I still have the amp. I still use it. Can't say I regret it, but I was like, man, there's only 250 in the world, and everyone who has one would never sell it. And eventually, I came across one that someone sold me. So this is a number 16 of 250. So this is the second copy I've had. So one of my favorites, and barring a terrible act of nature, I would never sell that. We're down to the last four. Trying to hurry. A couple years ago, this is fast forward, this is 2 years ago, I was working a job. You guys know the story. This is before I had my record store. I was working a job I hated. I worked jobs for years that I hated because my family needed money, and records weren't paying the bills. They weren't as popular at the time. I always bought and sold records, but never could make enough money doing it. And worked this job that was just sucking the life out of me. I mean, it was sucking my soul out. I hated it. Every day I hated going to work. It was horrible. It was the worst job I ever had. And this one day, my boss was riding me. I freaking hated it. I was having the worst day. And it's the simple things, And I had a guy call me and said, hey, so-and-so gave me your number. He said, you buy records. My wife and I are cleaning out the garage. We're doing some spring cleaning. I got to get these records out of here. My wife doesn't want them anymore. She told me to throw them in the trash. And I said, I'll see if this guy wants them. So during my lunch break, I met him nearby in a parking lot, and he opened his trunk, and I just couldn't believe it. It was some killer stuff. It was some great Psych, some great prog, like every Pink Floyd album, all that stuff. But this is an album that I wanted so bad. So bad. And I had a beater copy of it that wasn't very nice, but this is a very clean first pressing. It's actually a promo copy. You see the promo strip here and the promo stamp on the back, but this is a very clean promo copy of Mighty Baby. If you've ever heard of Mighty Baby, it is a absolute smoking killer prog album. This album is phenomenal. If you've not heard this, hear it. It's going to blow your mind. Look this up. It's tough to find. Prices are kind of all over the place on this. I mean, I've seen promo copies like this go up to $300, $400, but this is one of my favorite records in my collection because I remember having such a horrible day and it just sucking the life out of me, and then finding this record and it just turning everything around for me. It was that feeling of holding it in my hands like, I cannot believe I have this. This is so rare, and it's right here, So that was kind of important for me. Fast forward maybe another year. It was my birthday, and my grandma sometimes gives me money for my birthday still, and sometimes she doesn't, because I'm a grown man, and I don't really need money from my grandma for my birthday. But this one year, she was like, hey, Dylan, I came up to visit her, and it was on my birthday, and she lives up in the mountains, and she said, Dylan, I just want to give you something for your birthday, and I don't want you to spend it on bills or anything like that. I want you to spend it on something that is for you, that you love. And I said, okay, and she gave me a $100 bill. I'm walking down later that day in Asheville, go to this record store, Voltage Records, downtown Asheville, great shop. And this is hanging on the wall, Yesterday's Children. It's a mint. Near mint, not very nice, very clean copy. It's got a price tag of $160 on it, which is a little high. I'll be honest, it's a little high. And I said, "Can I see that?" And he's like, "You know what this is?" And I said, "Yeah, no, come on, man." And he pulled it off the wall, handed it to me, and looked at it. It's clean. I was like, "Man, I'd love to have this." He's like, "Well, I'm open to offers." And I said, "Listen, this is low ball. This is what I got. $100. Slapped the $100 bill, fresh, crisp, straight out of grandma's purse. $100 bill on the counter, and he's like, sold. $100. It's a lot of money for a record, but this was the perfect birthday gift, and it was for my grandma, and she didn't even know it. So that, I know it's a simple story, but this is a record I looked for so long. I love this album, and yeah, I looked for it for years and years and could never find one. And there it was, at the right place, at the right time, when I had that $100 bill. A couple of years ago, I went through this rebirth of discovering some really great, cool singer-songwriters. So one of them that I really got into heavily was Blaze Foley. I've showed this record multiple times on my channel, as well as the next record I'm going to show. So you probably have seen this before, and you've probably heard the story before, sorry. But this is Blaze Foley. This is the only album that he ever put on vinyl originally, like when he was alive. This is probably one of the rarest records I have. It's probably worth about $200-300, $250, $300, something like that. But this was, there's only 100 copies made. Well, there's 500 copies made. The recording studio that he recorded at, the guy that was over it, there was a DEA drug bust, and the DEA came in there and destroyed all the tapes, destroyed everything. And there were these 500 copies of this that had just come off the press. They destroyed 400 copies, and they gave the last 100 to Blaze Foley, this man. And Blaze Foley had the 100, and legend has it, he went around and he traded them for beer and gave them to his friends and family, and there was only 100. So this was Blaze Foley's that was probably in the back of his car, you know, at some point, like just traveling around the country playing music. So that's super important, super sentimental, like that he owned this. He literally owned this record. It was in his hands at one point. That's crazy to me. But Blaze Foley was just a phenomenal songwriter. He had a really bad string of luck. He suffered with addiction and eventually got killed. Someone shot him. So it's a long story. There's a movie called Blaze, I think, that tells most of the story. But anyways, that is a really great record. And right when I was going through finding out all about him and all this stuff, it just landed in my lap, really. I found a guy that had one. And he had bought a collection from somebody that was this old road dog going around playing music. That Blaze Foley had traded him beer for this record. And it was in his collection. So I ended up getting it at a really nice price. And so that's one of my favorites. Last one, this is an album that I thought I would never own. This is an original first pressing of Townes Van Zant's self-titled 1969 record on Poppy. Now, if you're not a Townes collector, this is the rarest, probably the rarest Townes record. This is my favorite Townes record. This is one of my favorite records of all time, top 3, easily. First time I heard this album, it completely took my breath away. Amazing. And these are so rare and so hard to find and so expensive. I never thought I'd own one. And I was talking about it on my YouTube channel one day, and this dude had one and freaking put it in the mail and mailed it to me. Just gave it to me. And his name's Art Bellali. Art, if you're watching this, man, I will mention you every time I show it because I can't believe you did that. It's the nicest thing. There's a thing in the vinyl community on YouTube, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called VCLT, Vinyl Community Love Train, where you just send people free records. People rarely send me free records, which I'm fine with. There's other people that probably need them more. I've got so many records anyways, I don't expect people to send me a lot of records, but it's really special when someone does. And so it's only happened a couple times, but every time it's happened, it has been extremely intentional and heartfelt. He wrote me this great note, and I'm still trying to find some really good things to send him to make it worth his while, but he sent me this with nothing in return, just to tell me to enjoy it. So that was a gift, and it's a record I never thought I'd have, and it's one of my favorite albums. It's super rare, super hard to find. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to show you just some neat things that meant a lot to me, and maybe it'll be interesting stories for you guys and help you pass the time quickly. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button. In the links below, we have my shop where you can buy hats, shirts, stickers, all that stuff to help support the shop during this time. Also, we post a ton on Instagram when we get new stuff and interesting things about music and all that stuff. The links below for Instagram, Facebook, all that. Check us out, follow us, stay connected. We love to get to know you guys. So, thank you. See you next time.